Welcome to the IT Modernization and AI Summit presented today by State Scoop. I'm Jake Williams, the Senior Vice President of Modernization for Scoop News Group, and I'm so excited to have you here with us today. For the last 11 years, the State Scoop and EdScoop teams have been working closely with technology leaders from across the country in states, cities, counties, and higher education institutions. We bring together the top leaders from government and technology to exchange ideas, best practices, and find new ways to work together to serve residents and students better. As we gather here in the final months of 2024, it's clear that the pace of technological advancement, particularly in areas like AI, has accelerated dramatically. As the name of the event would suggest, this summit is not just about IT modernization. It's about understanding how state and local governments can harness these emerging cutting edge tools to fundamentally transform how they operate and serve their constituents. While embracing new and evolving technologies, leaders remain laser focused on the urgent need to modernize. Though changing, the path forward is evolving. It's no longer just about big projects or piecemeal approaches. It's about strategically integrating new technologies like AI to enhance efficiency, improve decision making, and create more personalized and effective services. We have a really exciting lineup today featuring leaders from states, cities, and counties at the forefront of IT innovation, as well as private sector thought leaders who are partnering with the public sector to drive this transformation. Throughout the summit, we'll explore how leaders are thinking about IT modernization in the AI era, how they're structuring the workforce to embrace the challenge while still keeping an eye on security and privacy. You'll hear keynotes from the leaders on the forefront of the movement and panel discussions with experts. The goal is for you to leave today with new insights, valuable connections, and a renewed sense of inspiration to drive impactful change in your own organizations. Please share your thoughts and engage with us on social media using the hashtag ITModSummit. I'd also, of course, like to take a moment and thank our sponsors today, Google for Government, SAP, and Wiz. With that, let's kick off our program. I'm so excited to introduce our first session of the day. Join me in welcoming Governor Dan McKee of Rhode Island to tell us a little bit about what AI means to him in the Ocean State. Governor, take it away.
Coming up next.
Thank you, Jake, and thank you to the State Scoop team for allowing me to join you to talk about the great work happening in Rhode Island to advance artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. As a former basketball coach and head coach of Team Rhode Island, I understand the importance of a game plan. It's how we set our team up for success on the court, on the field, in the office, or wherever we may be. But it's just as important that we understand the importance of meeting the needs of the team and adapting to what's best in order for the group to do better. And when it comes to artificial intelligence and emerging technologies, that's what Rhode Island is doing. Rhode Island has a strong economic momentum at this moment, with a GDP that outpaced the region and the nation in Q1 of this year, and we're continuing to see solid job growth across the board. But in order to keep those numbers trending upwards, we need to make sure we're being efficient and adding talent to our workforce. And we've realized that AI is a major player in doing so. Developments and advancement in tech are happening each and every day almost at a rapid fire pace. It's no secret that artificial intelligence represents the future of many companies and industries, but also represents a new way that our state can better serve Rhode Islanders, small businesses, schools, and families. As governor, I've made it a priority to keep Rhode Island at the forefront of being competitive, to get the best and brightest in the field to work in our state and work on behalf of Rhode Island. Earlier this year, I was proud to establish Rhode Island's AI Task Force and the Center for Excellence for AI. The task force brings together stakeholders from the private and public sectors to outline the risks and opportunities AI poses for our state and find ways we can best utilize it to serve our residents, support our businesses, grow our economy, and much more. Embracing AI and finding safe methods and practices for it is crucial for Rhode Island's future. And this task force is helping chart a new course for the innovation technology landscape. In recent weeks, the task force has identified vendors across key industries that will ensure expert guidance when it comes to dealing with artificial intelligence. The group has also hired the global consulting and advisory firm Accenture to help lead task force operations and provide insight and perspective into decision making. These are important steps to ensure Rhode Island is safely and responsibly engaging AI on behalf of a better future for our state. But our commitment to AI goes far beyond just a task force. We've engaged our state education and labor agencies to collaborate on workforce training programs and learning opportunities. That exposure for our state workers and students is part of Rhode Island's human-centric approach to AI, which means developing these systems to help support the jobs and work of people making our state better. Jobs in this sector are good paying and are in high demand, and there are talented young people who are looking to learn more about this field. That's why, in partnership with our partners in the Rhode Island General Assembly and the Speaker of the House, Joe Cicacci, and Senate President Dominic Ruggiero, we've opened the Institute for Cybersecurity and Emerging Technologies at Rhode Island College. Led by our former U.S. Congressman Jim Langevin, the school will spearhead cybersecurity education, workforce development, and small business support in Rhode Island, and help attract those talented young people to study and work in Rhode Island. The Cybersecurity Institute will equip the next generation of professionals with the technical and business skills to meet the cybersecurity challenges of the 21st century. The Institute will work hand in hand with our Center of Excellence for AI to create a code of ethics on artificial intelligence so that we are using it responsibly and efficiently at all times. It's players like the task force, our institute, and our Center of Excellence that are setting Team Rhode Island, local governments, state agencies, leaders, business, and Rhode Islanders up for success. As I said in my State of the State address earlier this year, Team Rhode Island is filled with talented, dedicated players, both in and out of state government. I am inspired by these people every single day. And with the resources and this game plan, we're confident we can make Rhode Island a leader in AI and technology, and that we can continue the momentum across Rhode Island. Thank you again, Jake and State Scoop, for having me here today.
Coming up next.
Hello, and thank you for joining us at the IT Modernization and AI Summit, brought to you by State Scoop and EdScoop. I'm Colin Wood, State Scoop's editor-in-chief, and joining me now are Amanda Crawford, the Chief Information Officer of Texas, Kevin Gilbertson, CIO of Montana, and Jason Snyder, CIO of Massachusetts. Thank you all for being here. We're here to discuss where AI and IT modernization collide. So to set the stage, states typically develop IT strategic plans and IT modernization projects that look many years into the future. I want to hear from all three of you, but let's start with Amanda. Did the arrival of generative AI tools change any specific projects in your state, or change how you think about your state's IT modernization efforts generally?
Well, hi, Colin. So when we wrote the 2024-2028 State Strategic Plan back in 2023, AI was fairly prominent throughout the report, and one of the four goals was transformation and modernization. And the plan really compels agencies to be ready to accelerate modernization through emerging tech like AI. So it was loaded in there, but I will say that so that report was formed in 2023. When we polled the agencies on that, AI ranked ninth out of 14 technologies that would help them to accelerate their transformation. That's just a little over a year ago. Recent polling and talking to agencies, I think it's shot to the top of the list. So I would say while it certainly has kept us we're on track still with modernization. It's something that we've been driving on. It's fair to say that the explosion of Gen AI onto the scene has accelerated the desire of agencies to modernize and to do so quickly. I think they're seeing that there are a lot of advantages and efficiencies to be taken by deploying this technology. We're seeing a lot of focus, which I think is well deserved and long overdue, into data governance and data quality improvement projects, which are foundational to the success of these Gen AI deployments. I do want to point out one thing that I thought was interesting, again, from our survey data of agencies. So in 2022, we surveyed agencies about what they thought about their maturity for AI capabilities. 86% said that they were in the initial phases of maturity, with about 15% saying that they had repeatable and defined practices in place to handle AI. Just 2 years later, and as we see with Gen AI emerging, we have 36% that say they have no AI capabilities or maturity. So that shows how what we had from traditional AI that we'd been deploying to now the emergence of Gen AI, now agencies are realizing, hey, maybe we need to do a little bit more with this because we don't have the capabilities to handle it. And we had only 11% that thought that they had defined, controlled, or optimized maturity to be able to deploy Gen AI. So it's definitely changed the landscape. I think we're still full steam ahead, but it just looks a little bit different.
Right. Kevin, how about in Montana? How did generative AI's arrival change plans at all, if they did there?
Yeah, so somewhat like what Amanda was talking about, we created our plan in 2023. And so, we knew that it was going to be out there. We have our legislature meets every other year. So that was the beginning of 2023. And then we did our plan in mid 2023. And as you can imagine, the prevalence that it has today was not quite the same as it was when we put all those plans together. So while we did incorporate it in, it really was more like any other technology, because we were at that time a lot more cautious, wanting to make sure that we had the commitment to security and privacy and all of that as we put that together. So we are working hard to put it in. In a lot of cases, AI is just another technology, and we already had the processes in place to get technology approved and things like that. Now, there are some dangers and other things that are unique to it, and it does offer some unique advantages. And so, we have had to go and create, policy and training and all of those other types of things to be able to make sure that agencies are using it, once again, securely and paying attention to data privacy and data quality and all of those things as we go along. So essentially, we've been treating it as on a use case by use case basis, and from a strategy standpoint, technology should be supporting the business anyway. So we've been focusing on how do we use this to get business results faster. And so, looking for those efficiencies and things like that. So we're not able to do anything from a, enterprise, everyone's going to do this with AI type of a thing, but we have been able to have some fairly successful smaller use cases that we're being able to prove that out. And that's kind of how I tend to do things anyway, more like get small wins, use those small wins to educate the users and then basically expand it from there. I do anticipate that we will, continue to grow that, and we're not going to have a choice at some point either, because every vendor that we have is incorporating AI into their product, whether we want it or not, which will impact our price and things like that. But hopefully, we'll also see a lot of benefit out of that as well. So, once again, looking at that small approach, incorporating it in as a general technology, but managing to educate the users on what's available. And thankfully, the technology has matured rapidly, so the safe and secure usage is getting easier and easier every day. And so, with systems being able to have the ability to not, train the models, to easily build your own, do your own training in ways that we weren't able to a couple of years ago. So as this continues to accelerate, I assume that we will bring it into almost every one of our technology projects.
Great. Jason, how about in Massachusetts?
Not too different from Kevin and Amanda. Our plans are 2022 and 2024. Our 2022 plan, essentially, you could almost have treated AI as like a footnote. Hey, that's something to be aware of for the future. Little did they know when they were creating that, where we're going to be going. So what we did in 2023 was really rally around AI. And it became apparent that from Massachusetts perspective, we were not prepared for it, and we didn't have, we weren't really ready in terms of a planning perspective for doing something. So based on my higher ed background, we reached out to Northeastern University and we brought in students. So we brought in a cohort of 12 students to work with us over 5 different AI use cases. We took the idea was basically we were going to learn about AI through use. And so we took those 5 use cases and the students were just assigned to them, and they worked directly with the business community and identified and drilled down into those use cases and then created AI components. One example that I just wanted to share for our Mass Highway Department. Our Mass Highway Department, when they're designing anything, the very first step is they go through all the policy that relates to that design. And it used to take 2 to 3 weeks for them to identify all the different policies that could be affected. The students worked directly with the Mass Highway engineers and identified the policy, the way to simplify the policy into AI. And so they created a chat bot type thing where they would say, I want to build a bridge. And immediately they get a response that would refer to all the policy related to building a bridge, for an example. The Mass Highway Commissioner was so impressed, he actually hired those 2 students that worked on his project. And out of the 12 students, 8 of them are now working for the Commonwealth. And 2 of the remaining 4 actually went to work for the city of Boston. And so a tremendous success of introducing AI talent into the organization with real valuable use cases, which truly did present the benefits of AI to our broader community. And now they're actively working on new exciting use cases for the Commonwealth.
Yeah, that's great. I know that's something a lot of other CIOs love to hear when you can combine the workforce element in there with adopting a new technology. Now, NASCIO's executive director, Doug Robinson, said recently that he believes enterprise architecture, which includes things like data governance and data quality initiatives, will be given more attention in the near future, and that interest in AI is already driving more of those efforts inside state governments. How mature are each of your states with regard to data quality? And are you ready to use AI in all the ways that you'd like? I think, Kevin, we can start with you this time.
Sounds good. So we've been catching up over the past 3 years. Before then, data was always really just a purview of the agencies themselves. The directors are responsible for that data and the ownership of it. But we did hire a chief data officer who's been working on, a data literacy program, and basically creating a statewide data lake. So we're becoming a lot more agile. I don't know that you're ever fully mature, on something like this, because it's at the end of the day, there's always going to be a messy part of data, unless AI helps us to solve that problem. But at the same time, just like I said before, we're dealing with it on a use case by use case basis where, we're loading, without name vendors, we're loading into raw data into our data lake and then basically building out the use case by use case, the data and making sure that it's quality for the use that we are going to put it to. That's been general anyway, just in terms of data-driven decision making, but obviously that will then lend itself well to introducing, AI to the, to these different projects that we're taking. So we'll use some of the same data sources that are there. And other things, when we start talking about, are we ready to use it? Yes, but like I said, it's probably always going to be at least during my tenure, a use case by use case basis. We've got several things where that is not an issue at all. Where, like for example, we're working to with some groups who have maybe lost a few folks to retirement, and we've got a younger, less experienced crowd in there, loading policy and helping to do decision making, which that is something that's quite easy to do, without having to worry about some of those things. But use case by use case, we're working toward being able to incorporate it in, and so. Like I said, it's always going to be a concern. I think data literacy is going to be more important than it ever has been before, and we will be working toward that. But it'll be an ongoing effort for us.
Great. Jason, how about in Massachusetts?
Sure. So data quality, we have, given the complexity of state government and the myriad systems, we have examples today where the data quality we're very confident in. We have examples where we're not so confident in that data. And ultimately, it comes down to data integration. And so we have a newly established program to focus on data integration across the Commonwealth, because we believe, through sharing data, we can then take that shared data approach and identify where the irregularities in the data exist. Because for the most part, it's not as if the data is inaccurately entered; it's just stale. If you think about your own personal experiences, you might go into one system, this year, and that data is pretty current, but you might have gone into another system 5 years ago, and that information may not be current. And so by sharing data and ensuring that we incorporate all of the different agencies and departments of the Commonwealth, our sharing data across that will be able to then triangulate and catch where those data irregularities occur. It is a major program and not something that should be thought of lightly. And I know it's sort of something that all states are dealing with, is how do you get data shared across all the different systems, all the different agencies, who owns the data. But we believe it's something that we can do in Massachusetts, and that we can really help drive that collection. We do have examples. We're going to do a use case by use case. So it started with a focus on education and educational outcomes. And so we've developed that, and we've shared across different education systems, and that is working and in place. And then over the summer, we work through emergency sheltering examples and work through that. But we are going to implement it and slowly grow over time a truly shared ecosystem for Massachusetts.
Great. And how about in Texas, Amanda?
So I think Texas has made significant strides in data maturity, particularly in data governance and data quality. And a lot of this was really accelerated in 2021 with the passage of a Senate Bill 475 that required all state agencies and institutions of higher education with more than 150 employees to designate a data management officer. So those DMOs then collectively form a statutorily created data management advisory committee. And they play a central role in improving statewide data management maturity with an emphasis on ensuring data quality and making sure part of this is creating that data management advisory committee brings those DMOs together. So they're working together, sort of to Jason's point about data sharing and the importance of that. Once they're, in the room together and they're talking through different issues, it helps accelerate that process. And they also share best practices on ensuring data quality and accuracy through then communicating that down to the data stewards on the business side. This group also makes recommendations to our legislature on changes to state law that might help to advance the issues of data that are so important. So, and then as Kevin talked about their data literacy program, We launched that about a year or two ago. We continue to deploy modules. Anyone who's interested in looking at it, they're also on our YouTube channel. So you could go to dir.texas.gov and learn more. And this is aimed at not only increasing the proficiency of those data management officers, the folks who are really the practitioners, but also to create that data literacy within the business side. And so that all folks understand the value of data and the importance of ensuring that we have quality data. And, I think all of this, we've made significant progress. There's still challenges remain, especially around privacy and making sure that we're now applying the privacy principles across all of the data areas that we have. And I think that that's, a area of focus and growth where we see privacy officers now partnering more. We're seeing more privacy officers in Texas, and they're partnering more with the data management officers to make sure that we have that holistic approach to advancing data maturity and positioning government here in Texas to really harness AI's full potential.
Yeah, that's great. A lot of stuff going on, but sounds like plenty ahead for all of you. You all get to keep your jobs, it sounds like. Um, we have a couple minutes left, so we have a bonus question. Describe your AI moonshot. Jason, let's start with you.
I think for us, our AI moonshot really is to establish a true center of excellence where we're just cycling through all the different use cases that exist with AI very quickly and coherently. We have examples today where we're using AI to extract business requirements from different code bases, our legacy code bases, which are out there and undocumented. No one knows anything about it. We're actively using AI to extract business requirements from them, which is exciting and new. We're working across grants. We're working across different training approaches and our service desk. We're really augmenting the services we deliver. And the idea we can do that through this newly established center of excellence. If we can get to the point where someone comes to us with an idea and within 6 months we can have it implemented, that's where we're aiming for.
Great. Amanda, how about you?
So I would say this is sort of a moonshot in the making already. So we've built the launch pad, if you will. So we have the Texas Innovation and Education Center, or TEAC, which is exactly similar to what Jason's describing. It's sort of that center of excellence, but on steroids. It's an innovation lab where agencies can come in with their ideas. We partner with the vendor community to let folks get in there, kick the tires, try out the technology, and see if it's right for them. And so it's really for us, I guess maybe that moonshot is not just one big project, but really being able to enable the deployment, as Jason said, rapidly of AI across the enterprise, and then use AI as that force multiplier that can really allow the state provide more, better, and faster service delivery to Texans.
Great. Kevin.
Yeah, so my career history has been in customer/citizen experience. And so for me, the ultimate would be to finally get kind of this nirvana of the no wrong door, portal for the citizens. I think we've talked a lot about that in government for a long, long time. And it seemed impossible, to be able to clean everything up and do that. But with AI being able to analyze what's out there, to bring it all together in a way that is useful for citizens, and make sure that they have that single access point where they don't have to know how we are organized in order to work with us. I think AI really has that potential to be able to do all of that and basically hide the complexity from the user and really enable them to get the citizens the services that they're entitled to.
Wonderful. There's so much great stuff going on here. I'm sure we could go on for hours and hours, but I don't think any of us have time for that right this minute. But and yeah, until next time, thank you to our amazing panel of state CIOs for joining us today, and to our audience. Please stay tuned for more of today's IT Modernization and AI Summit.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up next.
Joining me now is Christina Schutt, the Executive Director of the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum in Springfield, Illinois, along with Joseph Murray, Global Leader of Customer Experience and AI at ThoughtWorks, and John Sakala, Google Public Sector's Lead Advocate for the state of Illinois. Everyone, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Jake.
Happy to be here.
Thank you.
So much to talk about. Christina, I want to start with you. So last year, the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum partnered with Google on some efforts to transform the museum's visitor experience. Tell me about the project, what inspired it, what were your goals? What did you want to get done with that?
Well, for us, we always start with our mission statement first, which is to inspire civic engagement through the diverse lens of Illinois history and sharing with the world the life and legacy of Abraham Lincoln. And so I think as both a museum and a state agency, we're really thinking about that first piece, that inspiring civic engagement. How do we get people engaged with history? How do we help them own, contextualize their history, know their history? And how do we do it in a way that feels relevant and meaningful to their lives? And so as we began to think about that, we were really thinking, okay, what does it look like in an era where people don't read labels or people don't engage with history in the way that they had maybe 20 years ago when the museum first opened? And so that for us was really kind of the entry point to talking with Google, to ultimately working with ThoughtWorks and really the Google ecosystem to really transform that experience for people, to make it more meaningful, to make it more relevant, especially for our young families who come through. Those elementary age kids that maybe don't care about Abraham Lincoln or don't care about learning about U.S. history. How do we get them engaged? How do we get them to connect with it? Because if we can get them to connect with one thing, then it opens up a whole world of possibilities for other things. And so that, for me, is really kind of how the process kind of started.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you talked about the partnership there with ThoughtWorks and with Google. Joe, from the ThoughtWorks side, I mean, how did you come to the project? What were you excited about? What did you get really enthused about working on?
Well, I think the thing that was really exciting is just being introduced to Christina and her team at the Lincoln Library as a group of really forward-thinking leaders that were courageous enough to explore how they could use emerging technology to really add new experience to the already great experience that was the Lincoln Library. I also was really inspired by some of Christina's thoughts around how she could leverage this medium to look at history a little bit differently, like in particular the role of women in the Civil War and that whole period of emancipation. I think it's an often overlooked and very powerful storyline. And so we were really inspired to partner with her in helping tell that story too.
Yeah, that's great. And John, from the Google side, you work with all kinds of folks across the state of Illinois. What was unique about this project? What was so interesting to you as you got involved?
Well, it's a kind of combination of the importance of Abraham Lincoln's legacy and enhancing the visitor experience. And using the magic of the new technologies in the world today, like AI and augmented reality and extended reality. When I first came across this opportunity with Christina, I was introduced to her by another colleague at the state of Illinois who said, the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library Museum is a innovative place. And there's opportunities to make it even more special for visitors. Given that, since it opened approximately 20 years ago, things have changed, technology has changed. So I took a walk through the museum myself, and I started to imagine all the areas that we can bring the museum to life with augmented and extended reality. And I met with Christina and her team, and we had conversations about what's the art of the possible, and would this be helpful from a standpoint of what her goals was to enhance the visitor experience and have new generations really appreciate the legacy of Lincoln. And so from there, we had a discussion. We showed some examples of work we did with augmented and extended reality elsewhere, and the rest is history, as they say.
The rest is indeed actual history, right?
Correct.
So, naturally, collaboration between Google, ThoughtWorks, State of Illinois, and the library, all of this is what makes something like like this possible, right? I mean, let's talk a little bit about the technology itself. So, Christina, I'm going to go to you first. When you were thinking about this project and the role that technology would play, how did the tech itself make it possible, and sort of how did that process play out?
Well, I think for us, it's about the layers of history. So, the traditional way of telling the Abraham Lincoln or the Illinois story is this very flat. If you think about the way you learned it in the history textbook, Lincoln freed the slaves. That's the end of the story. And I think, one of the things that I really wanted to bring in that perspective was how do we add these layers of history? And augmented reality and extended reality is literally layers, right? It's layers on top of the kind of real world experience that you're having. And so, how do we think about that augmented reality piece as adding that layer, as talking about the role of women and how women are essential to understanding the story of Lincoln through that kind of augmented reality layer that we're adding on top? How do we contextualize that for people in ways that just weren't possible with our physical space? While we are a large institution, we, like everyone else, has limits on the amount of space that we can have, on the amount of labels that we can have that people do or do not read, on the amount of content that we have. But I think things like the Google Cloud platform really allow, in some ways, limitless space, so to speak, because you're operating in this digital environment where you can have so much more content that's not possible in the kind of physical space. One of the things that I'm really excited about is that, in addition to these layers that we're adding, we're also letting people interact with actual artifacts, things that people can't touch in the real life. For example, like Mary Lincoln's music box. We don't let visitors come and play Mary Lincoln's music box just because it's fragile. We want to protect it for future generations. But things like augmented reality, the digital components that go into not only 3D scanning that music box, but also creating a digital impression where visitors can actually play Mary Lincoln's music box and hear the same music that Mary Lincoln would have heard when she played the music box back in the 1860s. And I think for me, that's the powerful connection point. That's the point at which people are not only seeing the history or learning about the history, but where history is literally leaping off the page and coming alive. Where you can crank the actual music box and experience it, or even, with the layers of things like translation, where it would be very difficult for us to provide translations for the 6 languages and to have 6 different labels for every single object that we put on display, especially with the way that we rotate objects. But again, with that augmented reality piece, now we're adding in those labels in all of the 6 languages that Illinois supports as official languages for the state. So I think that's another way in which people can really think about that augmented reality piece. And as John said so well, the art of what's possible, right? In some ways, it's the art of the impossible. When I was going to library school and history school, we were talking about digital things, but not in this level and not in this way, right, of the integration experience. So it's really exciting to see people interact with it, and I can't wait to see what's next.
Yeah, that's amazing. And John, from that technical perspective, tell us a little bit about what it was like to kind of unleash the technology, unleash the cloud for the library. How was that process for you?
It was fun to show the art of the possible and bring a demonstrable examples of this. The benefit that the cloud technology brings, as Christina, said so well, is it's kind of unlimited, right? And historically, you may have been encumbered by what you have to run this technology, within your 4 walls. And with the cloud, it opens up these possibilities of running these things as a service. And as technology improves and as Google continues to make enhancements with different AI concepts or different technologies in this space, the museum gets to inherit all of the benefits of Google without having to worry about these monolithic upgrades of technology applications. And what that gives the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library Museum is kind of unlimited scale. And as things change, it's very easy to adapt and enhance these experiences over time. So I think, from it was exciting for me to share with Christina and her team, what that could look like for them.
And Joe, you were right alongside here as the implementation partner here. What was it like? I mean, this sounds like such a fun project to work on. I mean, what was that like for you and being involved in the whole journey?
Well, I think it explored the edges of every aspect of the product life cycle, if you will. The way we had to really dig deep into the experience design and take early concepts and vet those with real museum um, visitors, and then the edges of the technology. So little details like we had to test to make sure the Wi-Fi coverage was strong enough in the museum to support this mobile app that was going to be streaming all this data. We needed to make sure that there was a way for museum staff to maintain the content that's a virtual reality content, which is different than what like a website or a mobile app. So all of those edges of technology were really interesting to explore, on top of the really wonderful opportunity to get very creative and insert those moments of augmented reality to the museum, as Christina so eloquently stated, that just adding layers to the museum. And you actually, the one way I think about it is, you don't just have one museum anymore, you have 5 museums if you that you can put these overlays on and be able to explore things like let families and groups have a shared experience. That's another thing that was really interesting technically, to be able to allow a group of people to link their phones together and have a shared experience where they all were kind of seeing the same thing. They could share like a trivia game with each other as they went through the museum. So that was another little piece of technology innovation that was really fun to unlock.
That's so cool. And when I think about a project like this, I can't help but think about what it means in the bigger picture, right? And so Christina, when you reflect on this effort, when you reflect on this journey that you've been on with Google and ThoughtWorks for this project, how can you expand on what you've done already? How can you envision this growing and changing into something even bigger than you've done right now? And not to throw too many questions at you, but what do you think the implications are for other institutions like yours? I mean, there are so many historical groups out there who could benefit from something like this. I mean, how do you see that all coming together?
I think for us, at the heart of it all is about relevancy. I love museums. I live and breathe museums, both here and all the time. And so many museums that I speak with, that I visit with, they talk to me about relevancy. How am I relevant for future generation? How do we move from the place where it was, come look at the pretty things on the wall, or come read this really long text label, to how can I be engaging and relevant? And I think that's really, for me, what this experience is about at its core. It's about that piece of relevancy. It's about being able to say, we're not going to be an institution that's letting this technology happen to us. We want to be a partner with you in the technology. We want to be at the conversation and at the table when we're talking about the ethical uses of AI, and what it means to develop augmented reality experiences, and how do we help people engage, as Joe mentioned, as families, right? We don't want it to be a solitary experience, as we know that technology and phones can often be for people, but how do we create a group experience for that? And how do we challenge ourselves and push ourselves in new ways? And my hope is that our app, our AR experience, will really be a blueprint and a prototype for people going forward as they think about what it means for museums to engage in this, and cultural institutions or even state governments to engage in this technology. We're saying, no longer do we just want to be at the sidelines and let folks decide what happens to us, but we really want to be a partner with you and jointly decide it together, because I think that is what ultimately the future of technology has to be, right? It can't just be this kind of solo operation of, just private, talking about it, but it really has to be this ecosystem of these kind of public-private partnerships, because that's where you get the best product, right? Because we're talking about it from, what the public needs, but we're also learning, right, of what's possible and what we can do in these situations. And I think for my team and my staff, I think it's really pushed us to learn. Our historians have had to learn about things like AI and what's the future of AI and what does it mean when you develop content where so much of our content in our app, like 95%, 99% of the content in the app was developed using AI. And so what does it mean when we're thinking about resources and thinking about knowledge sharing in that way? And again, I think that's what's exciting about it, but I also think that's where we have to be as an institution. We can't just be on the sidelines letting this happen to us. We have to be a partner at the table.
Absolutely. And Joe, what about you? I mean, this again, we've talked about this journey and sort of all the cool and exciting things that came a part of it, but how do you see this sort of in the context of the bigger picture?
Well, I think Christina said it really well. I believe that, this is quite an innovative experience we've been able to put together with Lincoln Library, but there's so much more that could be done. And I think Christina's point about leveraging AI for content is such a great opportunity to just expand and extend content much more richly and faster than you can with the old analog ways of doing things. So, and I think the other thing that's exciting is over the next 5 years, we're going to have a proliferation of new devices that can consume this type of extended reality experiences. So the thing I look forward to is how that can enable even more innovation around how we can create even a more immersive and relevant experience for the visitors that come to the museum.
Absolutely. And John, you get to close this out. I mean, thinking about this project in the context of all the different projects you've gotten to work on as the advocate for Illinois, but also in the greater context of what we see across, education and government when it comes to technology. What do you see here? How do you see something like this growing and changing and becoming bigger?
Oh my gosh, there's in the last 2 years, the technology innovation curve in the world has gone almost vertical. And what that is doing is it's scaring a lot of people, of course, right? And rightfully, people are worried about safety, security, those types of things, as Christina mentioned. But on the other hand, what it's doing is it's enabling you to do things and make solutions like this more accessible to more people in more ways than ever. And the adoption curve of these new technologies is going to continue to rise. And what that does is that allows you to expand what you're doing without the previous costs, historical cost of doing something like this. And so, as you look forward in the future, working at Google, it really is a magical place because we really try to focus on how can we help the most people with the things that we do. And every day we're working towards inventing technologies that are helpful to society. And so I think over time, when you see what's possible in the next 5 years, I'll be frank, we don't know, but I'm sure it's going to be impressive. And so, our job at Google is to, as an advocate for the state of Illinois, is to continually look for ways that we can help the state make progress and the residents. I'm an Illinoisan. I'm born and raised in Illinois. I'm very proud of the work we do with the state. And I'm mostly proud of the way the state has an open mind to listen to these new ideas.
Absolutely. What a fantastic note to end on. Christina, John, Joe, it's been such a great treat to have you all here today and to talk to you about this. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh,
Thanks.
it's our pleasure. Thank you.
And to our audience, stay tuned for more from today's IT Modernization Summit.
Coming up next.
With me now is Josiah Raish, Chief Data and AI Officer for the state of Vermont, and Nishant Shah, a Senior Advisor for Responsible AI for the state of Maryland. Nishant, Josiah, thanks for joining me.
Great to be here.
Glad to be here.
So both of you have something that's still relatively nascent in state and local government, and that is a job title with AI in it. But that doesn't mean that your jobs are the same. In fact, they're pretty different. So Josiah, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about your role, how you're approaching it, and sort of your philosophy as you approach that work.
Yeah, Vermont's journey with AI started like way back in 2018. I came into this role back in 22, and took on initially the role of AI director. Uh, and in earlier in 2024, when our chief data officer had to leave, we merged the data and AI offices, and so I became the chief data and AI officer. And so the way that we look at doing AI from kind of the centralized perspective in state government is ensuring that government can deploy AI to solve problems while maintaining trust of Vermonters. So our kind of purview in statute is algorithms, all algorithms used by the state, which is a huge body of things. We focused initially on the machine learning type algorithms and generative AI as that landed and became the focus. But that's kind of overall where we're going and what we're trying to accomplish.
And Nishant, again, a bit different in Maryland for you. So tell us a little bit of how you're approaching the senior advisor role and sort of your philosophy as you approach that work.
Yeah, sort of listening to which as I was saying, it's sort of same, but different. Like I've been in my role for a bit over a year now, and the mandate is really to work across the state to sort of build and execute a strategy around AI enablement, and one that in particular centers around responsible use, productive use, and finding ways to increase the state's AI IQ. I think a crucial piece of context to understand here for Maryland is that we are a relatively federated state with regards to our IT infrastructure and operations. Quite a bit is centralized within the Department of Information Technology, and the idea is to do more of that in time, but quite a bit is also not. And so sort of given that environment, we thought it would make less sense for us to start with a chief AI officer who may not be set up for success in our given context, and sort of take the route of incubating functions and embedding them into teams where they make the most sense over time. So that's kind of how my role was conceptualized. It combines elements of a chief AI officer and a policy advisor and a product manager. And that reflects, I think, essentially how early we are in our journey around AI. The goal is to now sort of centralize elements of that work, and in particular AI governance, as we build sort of the foundations for strategy. But in time, what we intend to do is to find ways to take like pieces of that, incorporate them into the DNA of existing teams. So into the CISO shop, on the chief data officers team, as part of the compliance function, as part of the Maryland Digital Service. Like these are all things that exist already and that we want to sort of embed these capabilities into. And I think some of this will be able to be transitioned pretty quickly, and we've already started in some places, and others will take, I think, significantly more time. I will say, if you'll allow me, just one more thing sort of on this front, which is that I think chief AI officers make a lot of sense in certain organizations, often when they're more centralized, and when there's like resourcing to make that title mean something. I think like the White House executive order, for example, was right to require the role across federal agencies. But like I also think back to like when cloud computing became a thing, and some organizations had like chief cloud officers. And I know that's not an exact analogy here, but probably something worth pondering on. Like you don't see many chief cloud officers these days, I think, for some good reason. So to sort of bring it back to how we're thinking about this role in Maryland, I think success looks a bit different than many others in that I think success is essentially like working myself out of a job.
Yeah, and that's a point. Yeah, I've heard you say that before, and I want to make sure we hone in on that because such an interesting idea in government, right? It's something that's not particularly standard. We don't think about that a lot in government as working ourselves out of a job, or working, our position into, into such mainstream success that we're not needed anymore. So with both of you, I think with that in mind, for other organizations in a similar boat, right? So considering, hey, we need a person to lead AI, we need a person to take the baton and run with it here. What does that first stage look like? How do we get from sort of where we have been in the last year or so, of AI, from this fun new shiny thing to something that is a utility or a commodity, or even more commonplace in government? Nishant, let's go to you right again for that.
Sounds good. There's a lot here. I'll try to be as succinct as I can. So I think different archetypes of leaders are needed when you're building something from 0 to 1 versus like more mature phases. Let's call them like 1 to 10 or 10 to 100. And the 0 to 1 archetype, I think, you know, like that human needs to thrive in establishing a capability from scratch, guiding it towards escape velocity, setting the conditions for success as much as actually building and deploying. And those are often sort of different skill sets than, someone who is then taking a set of things that have been created and being able to scale that effectively across an institution. And in Maryland, we are very much in the 0 to 1 phase right now. We are focused on building foundations and creating mechanisms. And I see like just solving problems versus creating mechanisms as sort of two different things. Socializing, approaches here, because we are federated, we need to convince a lot of folks to move along with us along the journey. Doing a bunch of experimentation and sort of cohering all of that and what comes out of it on a continual basis into some sort of strategy that'll put us in a good place to leverage AI, like no matter what direction the technology evolves in. And I think that's what like artifacts like an executive order is helpful for. Governor Moore signed one earlier this year, and that sort of helped put a flag in the ground and gets this large ship sort of kind of moving in the same direction, and being able to say, okay, here's where sort of leadership will come from in this work. And then legislation was a core part of that for us as well, where, we had an AI Governance Act passed earlier this year. And those things really sort of put wind in the sails to enable the work in the first place. Otherwise, everyone's sort of thinking about this and doing it, but this sort of centralizes, okay, here's where that work will happen. Given our incubation lens, I mentioned like part of this job is like increasing the state's AI IQ. That's an absolutely crucial and like critical part of this, because you need certain expertise at the table in order to build this stuff out. And some of that exists in the state and sometimes it doesn't. And so, this is a mix for us of getting sort of key roles across the state trained up, from procurement officials to lawyers to sort of others who will play sort of really important roles in the sort of AI adoption process. But also like, actually hiring and sort of being able to retain the right talent. Like, who are the folks that we need? We are in the midst of building out an AI enablement team right now. And that is our approach that we're taking to go from 0 to 1, and have a sense of the archetypes that we're placing bets on, to say like, okay, these are the folks that we think we will need in that aren't currently in existence in the state, that can sort of help us incubate these functions and then embed it sort of elsewhere. And I'm happy to speak more to what that team looks like and how we're thinking about it. But I'll pause there for right now.
Yeah, that's great. And Josiah, that 0 to 1, that beginning stage, you're well underway in Vermont, and you're sort of getting going down that road. What does this look like for you? What advice do you have for other organizations that are trying to get, again, from that like fun new thing to here's something that's integrated into everything we do?
I think, like Nishant said, that initially that just inventing and building and coming up with whatever the things are, how you're gonna like do the first few is really crucial. We're looking at it almost like enterprise architecture when we first stood up that capability, right? It was really needed. someone like at a very senior executive level to be empowered to make the decisions, so that not everything had to be done by committee, because when you're starting out, don't do everything by committee. You just won't get anywhere. And also like someone who could have the vision for the whole organization, and push that forward. And now enterprise architecture is a thing that we know how to do, right? Like we have senior enterprise architects, but they're not like the CIO's cabinet, right? They're having input into those decisions, but the kind of most senior roles have moved to solving other types of problems. And I see AI in a similar boat. We're going to need initially that AI director role, like reported directly to the CIO, was very involved kind of in the day-to-day decision making and strategy for the organization. And over time, we're folding that under the data office, and really looking at it evolving into more of a chief of algorithms type of a vision. So in the same way that we have our enterprise architects orchestrating pieces of the tech stack, we should think about algorithms the same way. And so the maybe this is more of a 1 to 10 thing, but thinking about, where we're going, we're really looking at how we can enable AI, we'll use AI to solve some of our workforce challenges, to make experiences better for Vermonters, things like that. And that's just baked into every project that happens around the state.
Yeah, and I love the comparison to enterprise architecture. It's something that I think has reached, and Ignacio even said this in their most recent CIO report, has sort of reached a new level of maturity for states across the country, and it's a great template for thinking about something like AI, and really changing the way you go. Josiah, you started to do it there, so I'm just going to go right back to you to let you do it again. But as you know, what does all this mean for you going forward as you usher these technologies and these products in? How do you see that shifting things? How are you working to integrate AI kind of into that fiber like we talked about?
Yeah, so we have a couple of mechanisms. One, we have an AI council, and I found that really valuable to provide guidance. We don't use that council to make operational decisions about like which specific use cases are going to get pursued, or kind of any of those operational decisions. But we do use that AI council to establish the framework, and then I'll bring to them like, hey, here's all the decisions that I've made and the decisions that are on the horizon. Like, what things am I not thinking about yet? And really use that to provide advice, but not to be another level of bureaucracy. I really am and this is different from for government. I really believe that having people who are empowered to make decisions, especially in these emerging spaces, is really crucial. Especially as you're getting up and running. And then as things go, right, you're going to have processes and governance policies and exception frameworks and all the other things. And we're working on developing those now. I think from a like more technical, practical implementation side, we've got some developers that we're training on how to interact with AI tools and how to use AI workloads. We've rolled out ChatVT, which is our internal version of ChatGPT. And we're building power tools for our staff to use on top of that. And we've made that broadly available to anyone in state government, and kind of built the training and the guidance right into that tool, so that people are getting that type of adoption springboard, I guess, as they onboard into the tooling. I think the other pieces that we're building currently, like actively working on, are things like developing a privacy practice within state government. That's something that Vermont hasn't had in the past, and I think is really important as you're thinking about how do we design algorithms, how do we enable robots to take on workload for people. We need to think about privacy and about user experience. I think those are two really important things. The goal of using AI is to make government better, not like worse. And I think our experience with lots of call centers and things like that is that we do tend to manage to make things worse when we plug AI in. So we're trying to avoid those patterns and get to where we want to be.
Yeah, that's really crucial things to think about. Nishan, I mean, in Maryland, like you said, with the stage that you all are at, and really working to have that enablement across agencies, have that enablement in projects. What does everything we're talking about here mean for you going forward? I mean, as you're ushering these things in, how do you see that shifting how you operate?
Yeah, it's a great question, and just sort of plus one to everything Josiah said. As sort of Josiah, I think, described, there is an ecosystem of players. And I think part of the key from my perspective is like getting that ecosystem humming. Like, what are the roles and responsibilities of these different folks? And the sense of self of some of them may be different than sort of what the strategy would have these folks actually doing. And so part of the work is actually to get that sense of self and the strategy aligned so that it is actually manifesting in the way that we wanted to. In Maryland, we have like an AI sub cabinet, which is like the governing body in the state and is generally like secretary level folks who are sort of setting agenda and sort of making decisions. We have an AI community of practice that we're fostering, which is folks across like the state and county and local governments sort of like looking to enable use cases. Sort of working teams within agencies that are setting up their own shops and thinking through this stuff. And then I mentioned this AI enablement team, that it will be a new thing and that we're sort of hiring for right now. That team and its role in this entire ecosystem, I think, might be worthwhile sort of just double clicking into a little bit. It will be the shop sort of that manifests that 0 to 1 ethos. I think, the initial hires here will be like an AI product leader and an AI governance policy and programs leader. These are like senior roles who are sort of like Swiss Army knives sort of in the AI space, who are technical but also sort of take a socio-technical lens and are like well versed in sort of the overall debates happening here. I think subsequent roles will be something like a solutions architect or a data scientist or like a full stack engineer, ML engineer sort of type archetypes. On the responsible use side of things, this team will really incubate like the version 1, version 2, version 3 sort of processes and artifacts and approaches. They'll act as an SME in intake processes as we sort of explore certain use cases. It'll help agencies really think through mitigations that are sort of would be required, to move forward their like desired use cases. So how do we get to yes? Is there a route to getting to yes? Sort of in the first place is the way we're thinking about it. And that set of folks should, sort of work shoulder to shoulder with their counterparts in privacy and cybersecurity and data governance to sort of move us up that like maturity curve and keep making governance more robust over time. I think as we get more mature and explore what's next, things like agentic systems, for example, and their implications on sort of service provision, this will be a team that has like sort of cutting edge experience with AI governance, and so they should be able to think through and operationalize governance for those sorts of places. Then of course there's like the whole productive use, side of things, and that'll take a whole bunch of other approaches of like getting in place infrastructure to sort of underpin experimentation. Josiah talked about chat VT, like we'll need something like that, in sort of Maryland as well. Crafting a sort of portfolio of proofs of concept, figuring out pathways to take something from a proof of concept to like a thing that's deployed and scaled across and used across the state, and that's a different thing. And then like, ideally in a few years, the AI enablement team doesn't necessarily need to exist as a separate incubation shop. And instead, maybe its capabilities are embedded into existing teams with sort of strong playbooks and expertise living across the state. Either that or it evolves into something that can work with emerging technologies more generally. And so we'll have to see how that goes and sort of take it sort of a year or a few months at a time.
I think Nishani, I think you answered my next question. So Josiah, close us out here. I mean, when we look at the future, just like Nishan just said, what does the future of AI directoring look like from your perspective?
I think one piece we haven't talked about yet is the idea that we are technical experts for our legislatures as they're building policy. And so I think that that's becoming more and more of a role for me. I think it is for Nishant as well, and other people with AI, even remotely in their title, are going to start seeing that in different states. So, like, making sure we're clear on the vision for what does AI, what does data privacy, what do all these things look like, and how to steer our legislators into those channels, and then just constantly there's going to be more and more focus on automated decision making and how we can streamline experiences for our residents. So thinking about, readiness assessments for things like data and algorithms, and like, is this automatable, right? Like, we have a new law coming out. Like, is that a thing that a robot can make a decision about, or could we adjust the law early in the process so that it lends itself to automated decision making and the efficiency that we can get out of government in that way? I think government isn't getting any simpler. So finding ways that we can use AI to continue to deliver services without dramatically expanding the size of government to account for new needs, I think is really important.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. Well, Josiah and Nishant, thanks so much for being with us today. To our audience, stay tuned for an upcoming fireside chat led by my colleague Sophia Fox Soel on securing a modernized AI-driven government. Stay with us.
Coming up next.
All right, so welcome to the Securing Modernized AI-Driven Government. Thank you so much, Jason Cavendish, Michigan CISO, for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited for the event.
Wonderful. So let's talk about how Michigan is trying to adopt generative AI into its governance. What AI policies are you developing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've really taken a data-centric approach to artificial intelligence at the state of Michigan. And so the policies that we've modified are our acceptable use standard and our data classification standard, with a real focus around how does the data that our business wants to use AI around dictate the kinds of AI that would be appropriate. So obviously, if we have public published information, then some of the already available, publicly available tools might be appropriate for that information because it's already in the public domain. But if it's information that has more privacy-centric risk associated with it, then we would want to use more of a private artificial intelligence tool or generative artificial intelligence tool in those cases. And so we've really directed a lot of our work around those kinds of concepts.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about Michigan's AI task force and how the state is kind of working collaboratively with partners, other state agencies to kind of develop these guidelines.
Yeah, absolutely. So it all started back in Q4 of 2023, where we brought in a lot of our industry groups and held industry roundtables that kind of gave us some insights into what private sector is doing, what some of the other public sector groups that aren't part of our direct management and Department of Technology Management and Budget at the state level, what they're thinking, how they think they want to use artificial intelligence. And from that, we figured out that, okay, this is a big task to really kind of undertake. And so we created a cross-divisional, cross-functional artificial intelligence core team to really dive into and investigate how to handle all of these things. And what they did is they started collecting from all of the agencies the use cases that they want to bring forward and use artificial intelligence with. So in addition to that data-centric approach that I already talked about, we took a use case-centric approach and started to categorize those use cases around what are the similarities. And we found that we had 5 primary use cases that were similar. And those are chatbot and natural language processing, code generation and modernization, computer visioning and video processing, predictive analytics, and document processing. And so when you hear some of those, you think, well, aren't we already doing some of that already? And the answer is, of course we are, because really artificial intelligence isn't net new. What's net new is the generative portion, right? And so how do we leverage that new GTP, generative transformer platform, or generative pre-trained transformer, into these other things that we've already kind of been doing along the way? And I think the important thing that we've really come up with from all of that is, when we want to use these AI tools, having a human in the decision loop. It's not just the artificial intelligence making a decision. And that human may be a member of the public that's interacting with a chat tool to make a decision. They still have some ownership of the decision that they decide to take based on the information that tool can provide. Or it can be an internal expert that is using artificial intelligence to have greater scale in what they can actually accomplish that they wouldn't be able to accomplish alone, but artificial intelligence provides that force multiplier to help them be more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's been about a year. How close are you to rolling out any of these tools? Do you
Yeah,
need more
great
time? Are you
question.
piloting?
So we're right at the point right now where we have 2 RFPs that are ongoing. They're almost to the award state. And the first one is for that enterprise class chat bot, artificial intelligence enhanced chat bot tool. It's primarily focused on our eMichigan, our michigan.gov website, and our My Login product, which is our global identity and access management tool that you would use if you're accessing services from the public side or internally for any of our applications. And so with those are the 2 first things. But we also have, as I mentioned, about 60 some odd use cases that we've collected from across agencies. And so we're looking at how can we take some of those and in parallel bring them onto that same platform. So that's about ready to start the process of bringing that forward. The other thing that we did through that roundtable discussion that we had, and through putting into practice what we learned, we figured out that, hey, we're going to need some funding, of course. And so we spent some time over the last year. We were given some funding through the legislative appropriations to the tune of about $12 million. So $2 million of it is for the first, foray that we're working on, and the other $10 million is really dedicated to trying to figure out how we're going to work with and build that overall governance model and expand on what we've already done, but also what's the intake process? How do we leverage repeatable processes and economies of scale so that we don't have 30 different individual products all doing the same thing, but we can make the costs more effective for all of the agencies by having that, hey, you want to do this, you want to do the same thing, let's buy one product that accomplishes both, and then we can make better progress. So working through that process as well.
Oh, I love it. Or even applying the efficiency standards of like generative AI to the procurement process across agencies. That's very meta. Zooming out for a second, I mean, generative AI is the emerging technology of the moment. I feel like we're on the like cusp of it really changing how government operations work. What makes you a little bit nervous as we're on this precipice about adopting this like very, very advanced new tool?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the thing that makes me the most nervous is the same thing that would make me nervous about any application that we're bringing on board that's going to process our data, right? So it's focusing on that data management and data governance. And, sometimes those things lag behind the tool's capabilities. And I think artificial intelligence could be that negative multiplier where we accidentally put data into a tool that then is exposed in a way that we never intended it to be. So I'd say really being careful, and that's what we've done, with establishing our existing cross-divisional core team. But I think that the rush to implement, the business really wants to get these things going. They need the force multiplier. And state government is all government. We're always a little bit short-staffed and under-resourced for all the things that we want to be able to provide, right? So having artificial intelligence as that force multiplier is super important, but making sure that we go about it the right way and avoid some of the maybe hidden implementations of artificial intelligence that everyone's rushing to put a new artificial intelligence enabled feature into their product, right? And so making sure that we're intentionally going about that and have our eyes wide open is what I'm hoping for. But also that's what scares me the most is that, it gets out in front of us a little bit more than what we're ready for.
Well, it certainly seems like Michigan is taking the right steps to be able to address some of those challenges. But for our final question, let's talk about what makes you excited about incorporating generative AI tools into the
Yeah,
process.
I think, as much as I just talked about what makes me nervous, what makes me excited a little bit is knowing that even though the risk of AI is out there, that the threat actors are also using it to attack us, it does kind of level the playing field a little bit for us in the defensive mechanisms that we can bring to bear and enhance some of our detection and response and defensive capabilities using artificial intelligence to really build out what our security operations center team is capable of handling. That, again, force multiplier conversation is really exciting because we know we only have a fixed number of full-time equivalent staff that we can hire. But what artificial intelligence can do is can really make those staff so much more productive and able to identify those needles in the haystack that aren't as easily identified by just human processes. The data analysis and data analytics that artificial intelligence can bring to all the security events that we have in our ecosystem and really find those outliers that we'd otherwise potentially miss and help us stymie an attack before it actually happens. That's what really gets me excited about artificial intelligence today.
I love that. It's almost like the cybersecurity employees are these like souped up superheroes with generative AI in their pocket, like
Yeah,
a
I
little
like
tool
it.
belt.
They're like Wolverine and Logan and the adamantium enabled artificial intelligence tools. Yeah, for sure. Cool.
Love that. Well, Jason, thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for everyone who tuned in. We'll see you
Yeah,
next time.
thank you.
Coming up next.
Hi there, I am Keely Quinlan, a reporter here at State Scoop, and I am joined by three chief privacy officers for our panel to discuss baking privacy into IT modernization. We have Cherie Givens, North Carolina's chief privacy officer, Jenny Holscher, the assistant general counsel and privacy officer for the state of Texas, and then Katerina Peñalinen, chief privacy officer of Maryland. So let's kick off this discussion by talking about how the role of the chief privacy officer is shifting and expanding to include AI responsibilities. Now, Jenny, I want to start with you. Can you talk a little bit about how your job duties have expanded?
Certainly. So I've been in my role as the privacy officer for the Texas Department of Information Resources for about 2 years. And when I started here, there was no AI in my job description. But pretty quickly after I started, I became involved in a lot of the AI discussions, the AI policy making, and it has really become a huge part of my role. And I think that is in large part, because there are so many privacy concerns around the use of AI as we kind of go down that path. But a lot of the things I did at the beginning that were focused on privacy are now focused on privacy and AI. So contract reviews, trainings, all the things that you do as a privacy officer, I'm now finding myself doing in the AI context as well.
Gotcha. Now, Cherie, I want to talk to you a little bit too, because one of the other panels today discussed the addition of AI officers into state government structures and architecture. What is your take on that? And like, how is that part of your role as well?
So we are seeing, well, we don't have an AI officer right now or someone devoted specifically to that in architecture, but we do have enterprise architecture is involved in our AI governance, or, well, I wouldn't say governance, I would say in our support to the agencies. So what happens is anybody who is looking to do or is looking to use AI in their agency would submit a PTA, a privacy threshold analysis. And it would also go through a number of different project mechanisms. Depending on how in-depth the project was, it might be sort of a light project management, or it might be a little more in-depth. And that would give them the opportunity to go through a number of different reviews. One of the things that we're doing in North Carolina is trying to combine our reviews and streamline them so that they move along more quickly and agencies can get to the point where they're doing what they like. The other thing that we're doing, I guess, from an architecture standpoint, is that because the IT has some centralized services, some of the AI projects that we have in process now will be able to be expanded to the agencies through us. And so we have, guiding documents and things for that to kind of ease that process.
Right. And I want to circle back around to talking about the frameworks and how the privacy and AI frameworks overlap. But Katerina, I want to hear your input as well, because I know your role recently underwent an expansion by way of the shift in who you report to. So would you mind
Yes,
talking a little bit about that?
sure. I moved from the governor's office into our Department of IT, primarily because our data officer is there, as well as our CISO, CIO, and we do now have a director of responsible AI use. So together, we all are under one roof, and that helps coordination. Um, I know that is, when we were talking a minute ago, Sherry, about the AI, intake process, we're still evolving that. But what we recognize is we've got business owners as well as various, our IT, team to ensure that people understand, what risk framework we're utilizing, and to ensure that whatever use cases that we have, we can also replicate across our agency, or so that we don't have to keep replicating the same thing over and over and over again.
Absolutely. Now, I know a huge part of what y'all do on the day to day is communication to either, agency privacy liaisons or, designated folks within this space too. So I would love to know how your communications is like changed and shift as it relates to new responsibilities with AI. So Katerina, I want to go back to you. Can you talk
Okay.
to me a little bit about some of like why that, consistency is important, especially with communications?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just think of the number of emails we have coming across our desk on a daily basis. Um, because we have so much information, I think it's very important that we all are part of each other's teams. We don't have one sort of over AI, team other than our governing body. But as leaders within our own areas, we attend each other's meetings to ensure that we have a consistency and a redundancy of information, and so that when new topics arise, we're able to address them, as team members. So in any given monthly meeting, or we also have an AI community of practice, which anybody can come into. I mean, and we welcome everyone to come into. Our data, CISO, AI, and myself are in those meetings so that we can provide consistency, because I think that's the key. And as privacy officers, we always want to drive, how do we circumvent risk? It's again, redundancy in this arena for right now with the level of risk is really a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. And now, Jenny, I know that Texas is quite federated. So how are you communicating with state departments about some of the new privacy or reporting requirements as it relates to AI use?
So that's a great question, because we really are communicating to different people. Our privacy network is great and strong, and they're definitely involved in AI. But our AI conversations really trying to cast a much broader net with regard to the conversations we're having about AI risk, because it's not just the privacy people that need to hear that. It really is the technology teams that, really want to jump on this AI train and race down the road. And they're the ones who, we need to be communicating risk information to. So we also in Texas have it's called the AI User Group. It's a community of practice. It's open to any public sector, state or local employees that are interested in AI. And so we have a monthly meeting. So there's a lot of discussion there. There's trainings that we've offered around AI guardrails that agencies can put in place and start to develop their own frameworks. But Texas is very federated, and so this isn't a policy that we're handing down. This isn't any sort of mandatory requirements that we're issuing from the state technology agency. It is guidance, but we're finding that so many agencies are hungry for this and want this information and really are trying to do the right thing and adopt AI responsibly, but also, want to be innovative and start adopting. So it's been a lot of quick work, but different communications, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Sharia, I know you host a lot of meetings as well with like agency privacy officers. So what are some of those methods that you would consider best practices specifically when it comes to the AI risks and these things that we're now considering?
Well, I think like Jenny, we are, reaching out to people on a number of different platforms. So we have the monthly CIO meeting, we have monthly privacy meetings. We have also reached out to the security liaisons. Plus we host town halls where we talk about, AI in general. We talk about use cases that are going on in the different agencies and what's going well. We've also talked about different ways that you can use them. And we're also putting together now an AI day. So it's going to coincide with our cyber and privacy consortium that we're doing in December, and we're also bringing in AI for that. We talk about it in strategy board meetings and other places. But one of the ways that we have found that's been super helpful is to create a page. So we have an actual page called the AI Corner that's devoted to that. So that's where you'll find our framework, guidance for the use of publicly available generative AI. Links to news about AI, links to some trainings. We've also rolled out some training. We're working on customized training that aligns to our framework. And then we have a number of different ways that people can reach us via email. So our AI working group, you can reach by email if you have a question. You can also reach the privacy office with a question. And so we tried to create a number of different methods to do that. And we reach out to the different departments, both within DIT and then in our agency. So at the DIT level, we're working in conjunction with procurement and with our attorneys who are working on those issues to look at things like embedded AI and contract terms and the like.
Yeah, definitely. And so I want to go back now to frameworks, and how the state privacy frameworks for, a lot of states are informing the AI frameworks. So yeah, I guess we'll just go back to Shri. So can you talk about how some of the frameworks in privacy and AI, and especially like with those impact assessments, inform one another and how they work together?
Sure. So when I came to DIT in December of 2021, I was creating the program from scratch. In May of 2022, we adopted the Fair Information Practice Principles, so a customized version for our state that is based on the principles that are from 1975 that underpin the Privacy Act of 1975, and that most privacy laws are based on, right? So things like transparency, data minimization, keeping people informed, that kind of thing. Those same principles apply to using AI ethically and responsibly. So the framework that we came up with is the responsible use of AI. And it is based largely on those same principles that you would find in the Fair Information Practice Principles. And in fact, they reference them, and we have a link to that. So the mindset there is that we're going to treat the way that we look at AI in the same way that we would treat how we look at data, because data underpins AI, right? right now we're in the cautious phase where we're using, you know, non-sensitive information, but the goal ultimately is to be able to, you know, get our data in the position where we can go ahead and do that and we can use it responsibly. So the same sort of principles apply. We would never want to be using, you know, data in AI that we didn't have permission to use or that was sensitive and had restrictions on it, that kind of stuff. So I think they blend nicely together. I'll also say that the privacy framework from NIST. So in our AI framework, we've adopted the AI risk management framework, right? That framework aligns with the privacy framework, which is also from NIST, and with NIST cybersecurity framework. So all of those frameworks were designed to work together, or at least with NIST working on how those work together. And I find that for our state, it's very helpful to have adopted that, because having them all work together that way, then we all have the same meaning of any of the terms we're using. If you ever look at like, oh, what is the meaning of AI, or, you know, what does this term mean? There's all these different definitions and they come from all kinds of places. And one of the things that we focused on was on making sure that we had a consistent understanding across our policies. And we think that that will help people to have a common understanding of, you know, how to go about it responsibly.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Now, Jenny, I know that Texas has an AI council that's kind of involved in some of these processes. So, would you mind talking about that and how the council is kind of helping build out these frameworks for responsible AI use?
Yes, definitely. So, our legislature, almost 2 years ago, adopted a bill that created the AI Council, and they have been meeting. I think their first meeting was in last fall, and one of the big responsibilities of the council is to ask the agencies to do AI inventories. So these are very exhaustive reviews of what AI we're currently using as a state, and or what is coming quickly down the road, and what agencies are sort of planning to use. And so from that, they've done a ton of information gathering. They've also interviewed at a number of hearings all sorts of agency technology officers and agency privacy officers. I've testified there before about kind of how AI is being used and what things we need to be thinking about. And their final report should come out the 1st of December, if not before. And I think we will see both some legislative recommendations and also some policies that can be implemented and regulations that can be implemented even without legislation, so that agencies have a clear picture of what Texas is comfortable with in terms of our government, our legislature, and where to go from there. But it has really been a very collaborative process, and all of the agencies coming together as they sort of racked their brains to fill out these inventories. You know, but it was a really valuable tool, and I think what we've seen is that there is a lot of AI already in use across the state.
Yeah, yeah. And Katerina, I would love to hear like how you all in Maryland are approaching these AI assessments or privacy assessments and thinking about how they work together as well.
Sure. First, if I could, I'd like to also address that have an AI sub-cabinet to the governor's office, number one, and our legislature basically moved the catalyst, I can't remember the quite name of it, but moved that right into legislation, so that we are all synchronous with, you know, what our objectives are. And so I think that that's key. We're also looking at creating a proof of concept. We're required by legislation to do that. And so that puts onus on our agencies to fully understand, like, what purpose do you want to use AI for? Is this the right tool? Do we have the internal skill set, or do we need additional AI skill sets in order to implement this properly? And so that's one of our major goals, is to create a proof of concept for our procurements, so that we're not, locked in, or, go into a huge project without having really vetted it first. And I think a lot of other states are doing that as well. As far as our assessments go, while we have NIST framework, I think, is one of the best frameworks because it does help us coordinate and become more efficient. What we've done with like our privacy impact assessment is, I've included certain AI questions, right? And those AI questions trigger then the AI assessment, which then aligns back with our IT security assessments. We're looking forward to, creating a module instead of right now, everything's manual, but really creating our module so that it's streamlined and gets us closer to not just doing the assessments, but also getting closer to cutting that time down it takes to actually, procure or, make sure we do the right assessments and then be able to procure in a more timely manner.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like, based off of our panel's title, that there truly is like just this organic baking in of consideration of privacy up at the front when thinking about AI, which is really cool. And I would love to take like kind of a forward look, and maybe if you all could answer this question, that would be great. But I would love to hear like what you all are anticipating as either being hurdles or opportunities that you're excited about when it comes to making sure that privacy is considered at the forefront. So maybe Jenny, we'll start with you.
Sure, sure. So I think that I think that the biggest hurdle we have, the biggest obstacle, is that there is this tremendous excitement about AI and this rush to adoption. And so there are definitely times where privacy is not a thought right at the beginning, which it needs to be. We really need to be starting these AI discussions with questions about what data does this use? What's the output going to look like? How are we going to store this? How is it going to be protected? And that's not to slow down the process. It's just to make sure that we are responsibly using our data and being careful about our constituents' personal information. And so I think I see the biggest hurdle is maybe the enthusiasm of AI, because it is, resulting in some, very fast movement when, there's some times when we really do need to like step back, think about the risk, and think about ways we can mitigate that risk before we move forward instead of having to come back after the fact. So I think that's my biggest concern, but I also think discussions like this will help emphasize the importance of those conversations at the outset.
Absolutely. Now, Sheree, for you?
Well, I think I have similar hurdles to what Jenny has said, but I guess for me, or I guess for North Carolina, it's not just for me, but as we talked about it, one of the things that we think is perhaps one of the biggest hurdles is that you can use publicly available generative AI without going through us, right? So it's not even if we would be brought in late, but that we might not be brought in at all. And, I have a great group of people that I work with who are embedded in the agencies doing privacy. But like, I remember when we first read about, that one company, and I won't name them, whose people, put proprietary information into publicly available generative AI, and then it was out there. To me, one of the biggest things that I see is not that people wouldn't want to bring in privacy or have those considerations, it's that it just doesn't occur to them. And then they're using data in a way that they're not expecting it to be a problem. And then once it's out, it's out. And I don't know that everybody who is excited about using, particularly generative AI understands that sort of an issue. And I also worry about us getting in, I guess I would say getting all of our controls in place to make sure that when we do start to, use generative AI on a broader scale, that we don't have people who have access to information that perhaps they shouldn't have, because then it will be leaking in all different directions, and that concerns me. But I think even though I'm concerned about those sorts of things, I think it's an amazing opportunity to free up people from mundane tasks that they don't necessarily need to spend all their time doing, right? That will free them up to be more creative, to be more productive. I think that, AI has the capacity to allow us to know better things about our data and what our people need, right? So, my understanding of my role here at the state is to work to support the needs of our people, right? Part of what we do is try to figure out where we can, put our energies and stuff into meeting their needs. And I think that AI gives us that ability. At least good AI would give us that ability to know and to be able to do that. And I also am amazed and impressed that, the things that we can do with security, right? Even just like not only the AI that's trying to combat the AI that is working against us, but even just like when we think about from a privacy standpoint, to be able to detect and all that kind of stuff, any kind of unusual circumstances and, fraud detection and the like, I think it's an amazing opportunity for all of us.
For sure, for sure. And Kat, will you wrap us up with your answer?
Oh, sure. I think that one of the areas that we really need to focus on are those privacy enhancing techniques, right? Because we do have times that people will make mistakes, right? Or whatever it is. And we need to ensure that we're able to protect the data. At the same time, just all three of us or all of us agree that the information that the state holds has significant value. And so the use of AI while using those protective techniques that disallow any, identification of individuals, we will be able to really meet better needs of our constituents because we understand we've got good data around it. And if we can meet their needs, and AI enables us to have much more productive workflows within state government and helps us to find more efficiencies. That will allow us to, dedicate and focus more on what our constituents need than any old baked in, right? Old stale. I mean, we're baking a new pie here. Being able to really use the data in a very forward-thinking way. And we all recognize that if we can do that, we will help improve the quality of our constituents and of our employees. And so that's really what I'm looking forward to, is how we can be efficient and informed.
Wow, baking a new pie. What a lovely metaphor to end on. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you to these panelists for joining us today. To our audience, stay tuned for more from today's IT Modernization and AI Summit.
Coming up next.
Hello, I'm Nikhil Deshpande, Chief Digital and AI Officer for the great state of Georgia. It's a pleasure to be with you today at this pivotal moment in our journey with artificial intelligence and the exciting emerging technologies that are surrounding all of us. We are witnessing an unprecedented transformation in how AI integrates into our daily lives, reshaping industries, enhancing public services, and expanding into spaces we could only imagine a few years ago. As we gather here to explore the latest advancements, innovations, and challenges in AI, I would like to take a moment to reflect on how far we have come and where we are heading together. In just about 2 years ago, AI tools like ChatGPT made waves for their capabilities, but today we are seeing AI transcend standalone applications to become embedded directly in our devices and systems. Companies like Apple and Samsung are leading the way, integrating AI to operate on our devices, allowing for real-time interactions and personalizing experiences on an unprecedented level. Now, this shift means we no longer rely on a remote system for AI support. Instead, AI is right where we are, on our phones, in our apps, within our services, creating interactions that are more immediate, accessible, meaningful, and personalized. Now, this trend is much more than a technical upgrade. It's a shift with the potential to transform the way individuals, businesses, and governments work and interact. And as transformative as this has been for private sector, we are also seeing powerful movements within the public sector. In 2024 alone, 45 of the United States introduced AI-related legislation, and 69 bills have already passed, addressing critical areas like privacy, security, ethics, and public service applications. This legislative momentum reflects the need to guide AI's growth in a way that balances innovation with responsibility. States like Georgia and others are stepping up to equip their workforces for this future, investing in reskilling, creating AI sandboxes, and enabling experimentation with AI to stay prepared. In Georgia, we are building on a robust AI governance framework to guide these efforts responsibly. Our AI Advisory Council has been instrumental here, working in dedicated groups and subgroups to develop policy standards guidelines for implementing AI responsibly and effectively across all state agencies. Last year, the Georgia Technology Authority published foundational documents such as AI Responsible Use Policy and Responsible Use Standard. These documents set the groundwork for how we responsibly deploy AI and public services, aiming to balance innovation but with ethical integrity. But our vision for AI in Georgia is not just for public-facing services. We are also equally committed to making AI a powerful tool for efficiency across the workforce and back-office processes. By streamlining administrative tasks, optimizing resource allocation, and enhancing decision-making processes, we can create a more agile and responsive government. Imagine using AI-driven insights to predict service needs, reducing response times, and enabling employees to focus on high-impact constituent-facing activities. From automating repetitive tasks to uncovering efficiencies in workflows, we aim to bring transformative benefits across all layers of government operations. Now, to achieve these goals, we are focusing on 5 critical areas of AI governance and integration: generative AI, AI procurement, data privacy, ethics, and building training programs. For each area, we are committed to developing new policy standards and guidelines that ensure Georgia remains at the forefront of ethical and effective AI use. These frameworks are designed to keep AI applications in our state safe, inclusive, and reliable, with a focus on real-world benefits for our citizens and state workforce. One particularly exciting area of focus is our AI training program, which is a key component of Georgia's AI initiative. We recognize that AI is only as effective as the people who operate, understand, and interact with it. That's exactly why we are building a comprehensive training curriculum aimed at educating and empowering our workforce at all levels, from entry-level positions to senior leadership. Our AI training program covers everything from foundational knowledge of AI to machine learning to understanding privacy, ethics, and data security in an AI-driven world. This isn't just about teaching technical skills. It's also about developing a workforce equipped to make thoughtful, informed decisions about AI's application and potential, especially in support roles that directly impact efficiency across government. We are working closely with educational organizations, private sector experts, and state agencies to ensure this training is both relevant and practical, addressing the unique needs and challenges of government work. Alongside this work, we are actively fostering innovation through the creation of the Georgia Innovation Lab, an enablement hub focused on accelerating the exploration and prototyping of AI and emerging technologies. This fall, we released a request for qualified contractors to seek out industry partners ready to help us create cutting-edge solutions for the state of Georgia and the state agencies. Our goal for this innovation lab is to create an environment where experimentation is encouraged. We want our state partners to explore, test, and learn from AI-driven solutions that align with our strategic goals. And we are bringing together a diverse group of service providers to help make that vision a reality. At the heart of our approach is partnership, and not just technical partnership, but also ethical alignment. That's exactly why the reason we partnered with the Truist Center for Ethical Leadership at the University of North Georgia to create Ethics DNA, an ethics guide designed to help state agencies and local government approach AI adoption with a strong ethical foundation. This guide will be accompanied by a training program for employees at all levels, ensuring that we lead in not just AI development, but also responsible AI governance. So as I close, I want to underscore the immense responsibility we bear as we bring AI into government. This isn't just about embracing new technology, it's about creating meaningful solutions that truly serve our constituents, enhancing their lives responsibly in a transparent way and equitably. Every step in our AI journey must be grounded in ethical standards that safeguard privacy, inclusivity, and fairness. Our commitment to responsible AI extends way beyond technical excellence. It's about building trust, strengthening public confidence, and ensuring that all constituents benefit from the innovation we bring forward. With focused upskilling, robust policy frameworks, and a deep commitment to constituent-centered service, we have an opportunity to set a new standard for how government can adapt to and harness the power of AI responsibly. So let's move forward together with transparency, integrity, and inclusiveness, building systems that not only meet today's needs, but pave the way for a fairer, more equitable future. Thank you all for your dedication to this work. I am excited to see the lasting impact we can create together as we build a future-ready, constituent-centered government. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the sessions, and hope to talk to you soon.
Coming up next.
Hey everyone, Chris Saunders. Love to talk to you today about the questions that we believe every organization should be asking themselves about AI. So when we started adopting cloud, this changed everything. We got these new environments, these new cloud services, all these new terms. And it was really about how do I get visibility into that environment to see what I have, to understand what people are deploying in the cloud. And then it was understanding new risks. Identity in the cloud is very different than an on-prem world. So also you're getting all these new services, all these new different logs, those different new telemetry about those services. So how do you prioritize risk and eliminate the noise? How do you get the signal to tell you what you should go secure right now? And then of course there was a new ownership model. In the on-prem world, we had teams dedicated to supporting networks, operating systems, application, patching. All these things were built into org charts, and they reflected the things that people owned. In the cloud, you could spin up all those things at will. So it really was this new ownership model of who was responsible for securing the services in the cloud. And then AI, this adds a whole new layer of complexity. You have new AI services, new technologies, new dependencies, more complex systems being built in these clouds. And of course, that brings new risks, data leakage, poisoning, vulnerabilities in your models. How do you account for those? What are those vulnerabilities? And then you have to uplift the people that are really consuming these AI services, because they could be data scientists, AI researchers, software engineers, folks that might be learning this new technology, but not really focusing on the security aspects of that technology. And we've seen this wide adoption of the AI managed services from the cloud providers. 70% of our customers that we talk to and prospects are seeing usage of AI in their clouds, like from the service providers, tooling, other systems. It's just shot up in the last 2.5 years. And what we hear consistently is security is the blocker here sometimes, because there's a knowledge gap. What do the security teams know? They don't understand the Gen AI, a lot of the new tools and terminologies. There's this term called pipelines, AI pipeline. It's the inputs and the outputs and the systems that support that in between. These can be very complex, consuming multiple different services in your cloud provider. And then we don't understand the security risks as a whole in industry. What are those? And that could be anything from leaking data into another model or out into the public, but also what vulnerabilities exist in these models. In traditional software engineering, we have, CVEs and maybe exposed resources, but what makes an AI model vulnerable? And then how would an attacker leverage that to move through the environment? And then you've got this technology constantly releasing. The pace out there of the startups and the companies that are building tools around AI to help you innovate for the mission and for the business is exploding. So all this new tech is coming out. So here are the 4 questions to ask yourself. Really, do I know what AI services and technologies are running in my environment? Do I have an inventory of those, a bill of materials of what's happening? It's very hard to assess something for risk if you don't understand what you have. We look at the explosion of Azure OpenAI. And if you don't know that people are consuming that, how are you going to assess that against risk? You've got these other providers that have their services. It's a not knowing what's out there is a risk in itself, obviously. Do I know what risk is this in my AI pipeline? Again, this terminology is new, but all an AI pipeline essentially is this idea of what are all the inputs and systems to get to the output. You've got models. You've got custom models that software development make. You have actions they make. They host these on virtual machines. They have training jobs. They're pulling that data from an S3 bucket or a database. You're still going to use traditional IT services to build this pipeline, but there are new capabilities here within that. And then there's the managed services that process this system, this pipeline. And what we don't want to happen is we want to be able to identify those vulnerabilities. You might have misconfigurations in these pipelines. You might have secrets someone's putting into the data itself. You might have personal identifiable information in the buckets they're using to train the data. The data for AI is so important. It is the meat and potatoes for the AI outcome. And if you don't have good data, you're not going to have a good outcome. But we also don't want to put proprietary or sensitive information in that training data if we don't have to. And if we do, we need to protect it. Can we prioritize those risks that I just saw in the pipeline? If you're going to have lots of pipelines, do I just focus on misconfigurations? Do I just focus on someone using a third-party software that has a CVE? Do I focus on where my sensitive data is? No, you need to focus on where you have a combination of those factors. And it's really about the AI toxic combination. When I say toxic combination, it's I have an exposed AI model connected to an S3 bucket that has excessive permissions and sensitive information. And we've seen this in the wild. Well, Microsoft exposed 38 terabytes of data because they shared a SaaS token in GitHub that had excessive permissions. And anyone could read that. they could get that URL and they could get access to this internal private Microsoft information. And because that SaaS token wasn't configured properly, they were able to get to data that they should not have. And this is something that we've been identified in the wild, and these are the kind of things you don't want happen to you. And finally, can I detect misuse in my AA pipelines? Like real-time threats, something happening right now. Is there a malicious AI model out there where specific files are being executed by that model that normally shouldn't be? What about anomaly detection? Or I'm seeing an AI service running something that, again, it's connecting out to a Bitcoin domain. Why would it do that? That's not normal. Can you identify that? And then can you see how a hacker might access your AI pipelines from the internet in the path to your crown jewels? Do you have that visibility? Can you detect that misuse? So let's summarize. Let's apply the same things we learned in cloud to AI. What is my bill of materials for AI? Do I know what risks exist in my pipelines? These are the inputs and the outputs that your developers, your engineers, your AI researchers are going to use. Can I then prioritize those risks and really focus on the things that leave me at risk to a hack or ransomware or other really bad things? And can I detect in real time bad things happening in those pipelines so I can react and resolve those? That was all we had today. So thanks a lot, and looking forward to the rest of the conference.
Coming up next.
I'm with Sean Thomas, CIO for the state of Georgia, Amaya Kapiyan, CIO for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and Rich McCaddy, CIO for Maricopa County, Arizona. Thanks for joining me, everyone.
You're welcome. Hi, Jake.
Hey, happy to be here.
Happy to have you all here. So we have a lot to cover today in a short period of time, but I'm going to get us started here with a really simple question. Sean, we're going to go to you first. Can generative AI solve government workforce woes? Why or why not?
It can solve most of them. Everyone is looking for Gen AI to solve all their problems, and it's not this magic wand that can solve all the problems, but it can solve some of the problems. One of them is repetitive tasks. A lot of employees are doing these things over and over again. It's wasting time. Generative AI can save time in those repetitive tasks. And also the skill gaps that we have with these new positions that are coming to us. The public sector, right now we can hardly find what we need today. With these new positions that are coming out, Gen AI can help with that as well. And with just day-to-day tasks, mundane tasks that, but again, everybody thinks that this is a magic wand, that all their workforce woes will go away. It will not. There's training, there's adoption. Some folks are slow to adopt, not fearful of what Gen AI can bring. So all of that has to come in play before it can solve some of your woes, but it can, yes.
That's love the nuanced answer there. Yes, but.
Yes, but yes.
Maya, what about you from your perspective in Pennsylvania? Do you see that light at the end of the tunnel that Sean's talking about, sort of a chance for Gen AI to step in and solve some of these workforce challenges?
Yeah, I agree that this, it's not going to solve all our problems. No one thing can. Can it have a huge and needed impact? Absolutely. In the Commonwealth, we're really thinking about this, and since the signing of the executive order by Governor Shapiro a little over a year ago, the approach has always been about employee empowerment. So, the way we see it working is hand in hand with employees taking a proactive approach, protecting against the potential pitfalls. And that's why we've really led the way with a pilot that I'm happy to talk about. But it's about exploring with our employees who do the jobs and to see where exactly, as Sean says, those opportunities to where the skill gaps and where Gen AI can help in different ways. So happy to share more about that as we get into things.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely a lot of exciting stuff to talk about with that pilot. Rich, in Maricopa County, you have that perspective of being a county government. Certainly, that comes with its own workforce challenges as well. How are you seeing Gen AI sort of playing a role there?
Yeah, well, I agree with all the comments, right? I think it's going to be a useful tool, a great enabler, so to speak, to really complement what we call our employee experience. So we're kind of looking at it in two ways, the employee experience and the customer experience. But from a employee experience, and I think Sean mentioned this, right? There's going to be an adoption curve, right? Not everyone, we techies think that it's just this coolest, easiest thing, and we're just going to adopt it and run with it. Everyone wants it. What we're seeing is a little bit of mixed emotions, mixed thoughts on how can we leverage that and how can we do that securely. So we have a private instance of GPT right now, for example, where we've pushed this out to about 150 employees as sort of a pilot, if you will, to just get some muscle memory going, get some experience going, get some feedback from employees on how this could be leveraged to really improve their experience. The nice part is, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, right, is oftentimes when you have the employee experience and you improve them and provide Gen AI for their tasks, it often translates to greater and effective service on the customer experience side because the things they're doing, processing air quality permits, for example, that can be leveraged to do this can improve turnaround times, improve quality. And we do think it is going to improve morale for employees when they don't have to do, again, I think Sean mentioned this, the mundane, repetitive type tasks.
Yeah, absolutely. And Amaya, I want to go to you with the pilot. You have so much going on in Pennsylvania. What have been your workforce's learnings or takeaways with regards to generative AI so far?
Sure. Let me just share a little bit about the pilot first, and then I'll get into the takeaways. But yeah, late last year, in partnership with many folks across the board within the Commonwealth, we were able to acquire ChatGPT Enterprise. We're the first state to do so. For a 1-year pilot. So also got 150 licenses. And what we wanted to do was to certainly give it to our employees to figure out, but do that so in a guided way. So over the course of that pilot so far, we've had 2 phases. We started with a safe group, our Office of Administration, so HR and IT, and made sure and work with HR to include members of unions that are within our ranks as well. So they were trained up in ChatGPT to start, and then given the tool. And we had a series over the course of the first 6 months. We did about 250 surveys, interviews, group studies. We had a Teams chat going where people could ask questions or share ideas. So that was very fruitful. One of the big takeaways, we did a sort of cut after that phase 1 around July, and we kind of did a big survey to see, okay, what have we learned? The takeaway was time saving, and I think that goes to exactly what Rich and Sean have been pointing out. So we did ask people to measure on a basis, and sort of on average, people reported saving about 105 minutes a day, which is pretty significant. And I think we all know that our employees are always overburdened, right? So it just helps them cut through and do more. Some of the common use cases were to support them were brainstorming, drafting emails, any sort of written content, and doing quick analysis. And so one example that I love to talk about is our HR team, has a responsibility over position classification. Say, set up a custom GPT to navigate about 3,600 position descriptions so they could use that in their daily duties. And then there was an example where they had been asked to sort of combine and consolidate down 11 positions to 4, and they reported as a team saving about 2 days work because they were able to use ChatGPT. So I think great examples of, I think what we all agree are the opportunity here. We've since expanded that pilot out to agencies. We've learned that it's really good to have groups of people that work together getting licenses, so they're not on an island. They can actually kind of collaborate, bounce ideas off of each other. And so we're learning more in phase 2 with many, many more agencies, types of problems that they're trying to address on a daily basis, and excited to share results in next year, early next year.
That's outstanding. Yeah, when you think about that amount of time savings, it's kind of earth shattering, right? And then thinking about what that does for an employee and what that does for just the sheer amount of work that you all have on your plates every day. Rich, you talked about some of the efforts that you all had going as well. What have your workforces kind of takeaway been from?
Well, first, I just kind of want to sit back and listen more about what Amaya has done. It's impressive to hear some of those things. We're aspiring to do some of those things as well. We're probably a little bit behind on that journey, but our focus right now, we've got sort of two key things we're trying to do. So we're still in that pilot mode with employees. So we want them to provide feedback similar to as Maya mentioned, so we can understand sort of real world challenges, how they can leverage the tool. But we have two things that we think are going to be impressive. We want to leverage it for generative AI to do our internal chatbot, virtual assistant, rather, where we can tie into, what's the policy on wearing jeans to work? What benefits do I have? We're looking at integration into Workday so they can easily, through a Teams channel, through a Teams persona, if you will, integrate with that and just ask in the way they normally chat with anyone, what's my vacation balance? What's X, Y, and Z. We think there's a lot of improvement we can provide, or sort of morale boost that we can provide for employees on somewhat simple things like that provides it easier for them to access and do the things they need to do. One of the things that we're finding value in our own employees within enterprise technology is everything from working on data classification and developing policies and evaluating all of the policies we have for conflicts. There's just, I think part of the challenge, and I hope others share it because misery loves company, right? The challenge is there's so much opportunity. Where do you start and how do you focus on sort of those high yield opportunities? So we're still in a little bit of that phase where we're sorting out the funnel, seeing which things really we should put energy into, which things should we really capture, good feedback on, and how valuable that's going to be. What's exciting for me though is these things are all in motion, they're all real, and we're getting sort of that live feedback back. We're exciting our staff because the one last point I would put on that, not to be a downer, is there's sort of two sides to the coin, I think. Some people, they see it and they go, oh my gosh, it's all about the risk, it's all about hallucinations, it's all about all these things that can go wrong. And then I found you have the other side, which I'm certainly on, and my group is that excitement about the potential, about how this will accelerate so much for us. And so when it comes to our workforce, we think there's, just back to your original question, it will solve a lot of woes for sure. We just have to be, I think, really smart about how we train up, how we enable our employees to do what they need to do, and then in most particular, share it, right? If someone's had a breakthrough and they realize they can leverage it in a certain way, let's make sure we educate others so they know they can take advantage of that as well.
Yeah, so that's great, Rich. And Sean, this makes me think a lot about what you're up to in Georgia. I think Rich talked about generating a lot of excitement around it and getting people enthused and excited to use it. That's something that you all have prioritized, or kind of right from the get-go. Tell us a little bit about sort of what your team and your workforce's takeaways in when it comes to embracing and learning about generative AI.
So our takeaways here in Georgia has been, and Rich, talked about all the things that Gen AI can, the fear of it. So the one takeaway is getting our folks comfortable with it, boosting that morale. And one way we've done that is look at your current job today. Send me a use case, what you think that Gen AI can help you with. So getting them comfortable with Gen AI, making sure they understand it's not going to take their job for one. The second takeaway is training. We've got to do some extensive training. That also will help get them comfortable, get that adoption rate up, because, as you train people on what to do and what not to do, again, we're working on the ethical DNA guide for the ethical use of AI. We've got agencies or employees that are trying to use these free tools. We want to make sure we test these tools. We want to make sure that they know exactly, what they can and cannot do with these tools. So there's free tools everywhere. So the takeaways are training, getting folks comfortable, making sure they understand what this is going to do as it relates to their job, and just going for it.
And that makes me think a lot about sort of getting down into the specifics of what we can do, right?
Mhm.
What are, and let's go right back to you, Sean. I mean, what are some of
Mhm.
the use cases that you and your team have come up with and are thinking about for specifically for your workforce when it comes to Gen AI?
Well, one specific use case is, hiring people. The time it takes HR to get the resumes, to get the background checks, to get the resumes reviewed and the interviews and the folks in. Most often, once we do all of that, the candidate has gone somewhere else. So getting AI to summarize, the resumes, sitting with an interview to translate that, making it easier for the directors to pick and choose the right candidate for the job. So we're looking at that to speed up the hiring process. Also in retaining our staff, making sure we understand, what they're lacking, tell us what you're lacking. Let us, bring in a tool to help you where the skill gaps are. So retaining those employees, making sure, again, they're comfortable. We have a lot of folks here that can retire tomorrow. And we do want to retain them because it takes us a long time to hire folks. So making sure we can retain our employees is huge. And then again, just training, upskilling.
Yeah. The retaining, especially employees who are eligible to retire,
Yes.
brings me to another panel idea that we could do is can generative AI solve the knowledge transfer problem? Which is something that I think we should definitely talk about at some point. Amaya, what about you? What about some use cases for you and your team as you've done this pilot, but also maybe even forward looking?
I think one of the use cases we are excited about is on the code front. So we have, legacy coding languages that, as we all know, I remember one of my employees told me, if the person isn't older than 60, then I don't trust them that they're going to know how to do this job, right? So how do we've done one pilot around analyzing legacy code and writing requirements from that code so that it can ease the modernization project. So I think that's one really promising area that we've just started to trial, but I do think there's a huge impact on that knowledge transfer front. The other one, I think we've seen there's really broad use cases, just the way we all rely on our office tool set, right? And shared documents and things like that we didn't have 5 years ago. There's immense opportunity for writing assistance and editing and transcription and note taking for everyone. Many people have that as part of their jobs. It's an accelerator. It can make us work faster. But what we're really doubling down on is those codes use cases. And I think, Rich, you brought this up. How can it be a tool to aid help desk interactions? We're focusing internally. Again, we continue to focus on the employee front, learn there before we go customer facing, as Rich kind of distinguished between employee and customer. But how can we streamline some of the support and make that agent all seeing, all knowing, right? With a tool set at their fingertips that Gen AI can provide.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point because we talk about how disruptive the technology is, but we don't talk about how disruptive the access can be as much. So that's really cool. Rich, use cases for you. I mean, you have, like you said, you have the pilot going on, but also maybe some other areas where you're looking for Gen AI to step in.
Yeah, I would, what comes to mind is sort of two, right? If we look at our employee experience again, we have a pretty mature ITSM group right now that have done some amazing things, and we're about to launch a new service catalog. So we think one of the opportunities here is that whole experience in engaging with our service desk, right? Everything from my mouse doesn't work, we can do the automated, have you tried turning it off and back on if it's your monitor, otherwise, right? But more intelligent work, right, that gets into those knowledge bases that we can, solidify. Really data drives all good AI, right? So get those things in a situation where we can offload sort of routine requests, incidents even, et cetera, and do some troubleshooting at a time that will drastically improve the morale of our desktop and help desk folks. And not just morale, right? These things I think will provide exponential efficiencies, right? As we look at them doing smarter and deeper kind of work. The one thing that's exciting on the customer side, though, but it does really relate again to that sort of double whammy, if you will. If we improve the employee experience, it helps on the customer side. So we're looking at a air quality process right now. We do these innovation days with departments to develop our funnel of opportunity for AI so we can be deliberate about where we spend our time. And one of them that came out of that is this massive process around air quality permitting. And anyone who knows about that, and I've learned about that over the past 6 months in particular, hugely involved. And we have these well-paid, rightfully so, engineers who are looking at these permits against new regulations and otherwise for renewals on all kinds of things, right? It's literally days and days and days of a process that we believe we can get down to hours of, as we try to like to refer to it as, we'll put 1,000 interns through ChatGPT, so to speak, and they will present it back to you. But as engineers, they're just giving you a head start. You're not going to let it loose and just hit a button and let it go through, but it will have saved, we think, 75% of their time, literally, to give them a head start on being able to compare new regulations against a renewal application. And again, that then translates to backload and processing timeframes, how we can be much more timely from a customer perspective in turning these, these permitting applications around. So back to my original comment, I think, right, there's so much opportunity for us. Our biggest challenge is how do we keep focused on and run some of these things down? But those are two we're excited about right now.
I think that's such a good point, because with that much opportunity, comes kind of its own challenge, right? Where you all have to make hard decisions about where to put your attention first, and especially now, I feel like a year or so past this Gen AI boom, maybe even close to 2 years now, figuring out how to get it from this like big shiny fun thing to something that's integrated into the operation is kind of its own beast. What now? Rich, we'll go to you. What's next for you all? What does this look like as something that's integrated into how you and your team operate?
It's not an exciting answer, but I will say this: we have to not backtrack a little bit, but we've been moving this forward in parallel with things, and as Sean mentioned, ethical use of AI, all of our guidelines and guardrails. And so we have a lot of that and nearing final completion along with sort of these pilots. So I think it's going to be important for us to get really a good foundation around the tech itself and make sure nothing goes wild. We don't want these private instances. We don't want employees using private public free ChatGPT. Those kind of things we need to make sure that we lock in initially, because we do hope to have exponential adoption of this. And that means we need a really good foundation for everyone understanding what the policies are and the parameters are for leveraging this technology. How do we create all the right forums and marketing, if you will, so that people don't lose excitement over it, right? We need to turn people into prompt engineers, in my mind, right? There's so much opportunity in every position to leverage it, to do those things. So that training and AI literacy, we still feel we have to amp that up quite a bit for us to be successful long-term in the adoption of Gen AI and those kind of solutions. So, and then we're just going to keep vetting as we get feedback from our pilots and from real life examples. Where should we spend our time enhancing training and awareness and things that will really allow employees to just adopt this fully? It will be second nature for them. So I think that's where we're headed next.
Yeah, that's great. What about you, Sean? Where are you and the team headed next? And what does this look like as something that's like properly integrated into how Georgia runs?
Well, hopefully properly integrated look like it's running in the background and no one noticing it. Everybody's comfortable with it. Right now, we are continuing to build our AI lab. We will take those use cases that we have from our agencies and work with our partners to put these into productions to make the workforce as they do their jobs much easier, making sure constituents can get services quicker and easier, faster. So we're looking at that. I mean, hoping to see something like more telemedicine come about. We're doing broadband, and we're expanding that to all of our rural counties down in rural Georgia. So hopefully, I mean, some of those don't even have doctors in their counties. So AI, telehealth, that's going to help those counties. I mean, maybe even, what about school tutors, school teachers, AI helping the teachers with the students. So things like that. So we'll continue to work in our AI lab with whatever use cases the agencies bring us. That's our job, is to make sure we're helping them solve all their issues, and let's see what happens. But I really want this to be integrated into the background where no one's noticing it. Everybody's going about their day. It's like everyday integration.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyday integration
Yeah.
sounds like the dream.
Yeah.
Amaya, close us out here from your perspective. I mean, what does this look like as an integration into how you and your team operate in Pennsylvania?
Sure. Yeah, I know Rich mentioned some governance stuff and I didn't touch on that. So, three things. Building out on our AI governance blueprint. We established a governing board as we started. They've helped guide the way in maintaining our key values. But, how do we build out? We put out an IT policy. What do we do from there, right? What's the guidance and structure we provide as these tools proliferate and the use cases proliferate? So that's number one. Number two, going to echo what everyone said, training. We're really close to officially kind of launching a program. We want to focus on training for all employees. So, roughly 2 tracks, one for the general population. It's something that obviously everyone needs to be educated about, especially from that risk side, but also learn about how we're doing it, what the opportunities are. But then the technical track as well, right? So for those folks who we expect to use it more in the day in, day out, how do we help them understand the capabilities and how they can use it? The last is scaling up those use cases. That's what the pilot was about. We could learn where we could maximize value and minimize risk. So doubling down on what those should be. We have had ChatGPT for that pilot, but what are the tools moving forward? What are the playbooks that we develop so that, across the footprint, folks can leverage those tool sets consistently and we can sort of evolve them, right? Because none of these things are going to stay stagnant. We're going to keep learning for a long time here.
That's great. Well, it was such a great conversation here. We could keep going, right? There's so much more to cover. I have so many questions about Amaya's pilot and so many questions about the AI lab in Georgia. But hopefully you'll be hearing more about both of those things very, very, very soon. Sean, Amaya, Richard, thanks for joining us today. To our audience, stay tuned. An enlightening conversation is coming up with myself and Jared Coyle, SAP's Chief AI Officer for North America.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up next.
Joining me now is Jared Coyle, the Chief AI Officer for North America at SAP. Jared, thanks for being here with us.
Happy to be here, Jake, and I just thank you and the wider community for having me.
Of course. So Jared, we've had a full day of fascinating conversations about IT modernization and AI. But with you, I want to kind of bring us to the close by talking about pulling this stuff out of a theoretical realm and into something that's real. So let's get started here. When you're talking to state and local government and higher education, what are you seeing folks up against when it comes to making AI work for them?
So it's a real challenge when you have limited resources, but you're trying to deliver value. In particular, I mean, to give you a real example, the first time that we ever worked with this technology, we asked AI a, very specific question. How much cash is in my bank accounts? And it responded with the word fish. And so we learned very quickly that paramount in all of this is the ability to get trusted responses so that you can drive real value within your organization.
And so, one of the things about AI is that really it is just like you said, when you're asking for something and it's returning fish, the experience is so important, because if it doesn't have that trust, if it doesn't feel like something that's reliable, the usage is certainly going to be down, and then the whole thing kind of crumbles from there. So from your perspective, I mean, what about the feeling or the experience of having folks work with technologies like AI? How can these agencies and institutions step up their work to make sure it's usable and something that can grow and develop over time?
So you want to think about how you're going to use AI in the buckets of what it's actually good at. And always remember that the best AI is boring. So what that means is you actually want to look for the use cases that are boring. So think about so we'll talk generative AI here. What can generative AI do really well? One thing that it does really well is it does a natural user experience. So those frustrating in-system challenges that you have with technology, whether it's for constituents or whether it's for your organization yourself, you can deploy capabilities to improve that user experience. Another superpower is it's really good at questions and answers when you already have documented questions and answers. And so you want to bring that to bear when you have these existing data sets. And then lastly, it is really good as well at allowing for the automation of actions and synthetic data sets. And so a good example of this is within SAP's solutions in the public sector space, we have capabilities called funds management. But a lot of times, organizations and individuals have trouble finding, well, where did we put that fund? What did we tag it with? And so we've added capabilities that allow you to auto tag and then very quickly find the funds that have already been allocated by, let's say, a state legislature. And so, that we see a lot of value when you think about it in those buckets. And then when you provide real, tangible, down to earth AI experiences.
Yeah, I mean that's huge, and it's also, you think about the role, and this isn't too much of a tangent, but you think about the role of being a human in a world that now has AI baked into so much. Having these experiences at work, is super important too, as you're figuring out how to navigate the world around you. It's great. So Jared, obviously change, right? AI is a massive change for government in general, and for everyone in general, but change like this requires, change. How are you advising folks to adapt and augment their processes or their operations to be more successful in a world that's changing the way this is?
Sure. So whether you're in the latest cutting edge tech company or whether you're, helping to serve local constituents in a county government, the truth is that the major resistance to change is often not the technology, it's the humans involved with it. And so you need to make sure that how do you bring technology to bear when you can't hire an army of PhD data scientists in a way that people will buy into it. One of the best examples that we've had is when you wanted to change a user experience, we roll out something that makes people's lives easier. So purchasing requests, approvals. Pull it up on your phone, approve. It's the little things that really get users and get, individuals using any sort of AI system bought into it. And so look at that user experience, take advantage of the natural capabilities and the automation capabilities to make individuals' lives better, and you will ultimately get the buy-in to make the more transformational changes, because it's those transformational changes that are really critical for most organizations.
It's interesting. All of this sort of brings me back to the title of the panel, right? Which is making AI real. Finding and building that next step has been a common theme here today in our discussion, but almost in every session that we've had. How are you advising folks to get going? What is a more integrated, sophisticated, or improved approach to AI look like going into the future?
Think in two buckets, because you can't think of AI as just a monolithic technology. And so I always suggest first, think about embedded use cases that exist within the solutions you already use today that can be turned on and create that sort of carrot buy-in that we talked about. You want your users to say, oh yes, we get it and we understand. And then once you do that, you buy yourself the right to do the more transformational, what I call build it or custom AI scenarios, where yes, there may be some additional bringing in of talent to be able to create your own unique value proposition. But that's second. And in order to get there, you also need clean data. So just a side note, any good AI project, 90% of the time, you're cleaning up and prepping data. So anything you can do to get your data more reflective of reality, the sooner you are in terms of deploying AI in a valuable manner.
Couldn't think of a better way to close us out. Jared, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been great to have you close out today's event.
Jake, thank you. And thank you again to the wider community for inviting me.
Coming up next.
Thank you all so much for joining us today at our IT Modernization and AI Summit. We've had an incredible day of conversations and talks with a particular emphasis on the exciting and rapidly evolving landscape of AI. Thank you again to all of our speakers for their participation today, and another thank you to our sponsors, Google for Government, SAP, and Wiz. The conversations that started here today continue online. Follow along with the hashtag ITMod Summit on social media and find coverage from today's event on statescoop.com. You can also tune in to Statescoop's weekly podcast Priorities at prioritiespodcast.com. And of course, be sure to join us again soon for an event online or in person. You can see our upcoming events at statescoop.com/attend. Thank you again for joining us and have a great rest of your day.